It's time to talk about a very simple concept and complex at the same time, because to use it's very simple, but when you try to understand what is happening behind the scene, that's where it gets complicated. So let's try to understand that in this topic of string. So in this video, let's talk about what is string. Now basically we have worked with string before. Example, whenever you try to create a variable, we have to specify the type of it, right? Example, we have worked with integer, float, double, boolean. In the same way, if you want to store a character stream, let's say if you have multiple characters, something like this, let's say you want to store a name like Navin. Now this Navin is not a single character, right? It's a bunch of characters. And when you want to store this together, of course, you can use a character array. We will talk about array later. But then we can create a character array here, which is an array of different characters. Or we can create a string here. Now, how do we represent that in a string? Now, one thing to remember, whenever you talk about string in Java, you have to put that in double quotes. The way you work with characters, in characters you use single quote, here we'll be using double quotes. So if you want to store Navin, so you have to first put that into double quotes, and then where you will store this? Of course, you need a variable here, right? So what I will do is I will create a variable called name. Now this variable name needs a type. Now what type of this? This is of type string. Now one thing to observe, when you talk about primitive data types, we have int, float, double, character, boolean, and many more, right? Now all those actually starts with small letter, right? This string S starts with capital, which means that string in Java is not a primitive type, it's a class basically. If you go to string class, you will find string is actually a class. Okay, that actually makes some sense. But then when you say class, we have seen this, right? Whenever you work with classes and if you want to create object of it, we use a new keyword, right? We are not doing it here. So this does not look like a correct syntax. It works, but it's not something we are used to, right? Whenever you work with class, we normally create a new object. Okay, this works, but then why this will work, that we'll discuss later. At this point, if you want to go in a general sense, if you have a class, the way you can create a string is object of string is by saying new string, and you can give the round bracket. Now this is how you create a string variable or string object. Now basically this is a variable, right? Reference variable, which is referring to a string object. Now what might be happening behind the scene? So it's not that difficult. If you imagine this as your JVM, the big box, inside this, of course, you will be having your stack memory. Right? Now this is your stack, and then of course in this you will be creating a reference variable which is name, and then it will have some address. But this address or the object will be created inside heap memory. Imagine this is your heap memory. We should make this a big one this time. Let's say a bigger heap memory so that I can write some multiple things there. Now the reason we are creating a heap memory in not a structured format is because there is no fixed size to it. It may expand depending upon your requirement. So we got a heap here. Now when you talk about this line number 8, when you say new string, of course it will create a new object for you. You got an object here, right? And it will have, let's say, some address. I will say the address here is 105. So of course you will create a variable which is name here, and then the address is 105. So there's a link here. And of course, in this particular box, there's no data. It's empty, right? Okay, this empty makes sense actually. But then if you try to print this, let's see what it prints if you try to print this data here. I will compile this code and run. You can see it prints nothing. Basically, it prints blank thing. Okay, it's because it's blank. Now, how will you provide data? Now, in this case, what you can do is, in this new string, in the constructor, you can pass this string which you want to. Example, if I want to store Navin, that's the data I'm storing. Ignore this original, this is given by the IDE, but this is our value, which is Navin. So inside the string constructor, you are passing the data, which is Navin, right? Now, if you try to print this, you can see we got Navin here. Okay, so that means in this thing, we are creating the data, which is Navin. That's what we are expecting as of now. Let's see if that works. Okay, now there's also a concept of hash and equals, right? So what I will do here is I will try to print the hash code for this one. So if you try to print the hash code, and if you run this code, you can say this is the hash code for this, depending upon data, depending upon some calculation. Now what else we can do here? So example, let's say if I want to concatenate this Navin with hello. So let's say I want to print hello Navin. What you can do is, of course you can write a different statement to print hello, and then you can print name. But then string by default does not work with any other operators like subtraction, division, but only there's one exception, which is plus operator. So you can use string with plus operator. Okay, so let's say I want to print hello and Navin both. So in this case, you can print hello, and then to concatenate, to mix these two, you will use a plus operator here. So you can simply say plus. And now with this, compile and run, you can see we got hello Navin. I hope that makes sense. So we can use plus to print this. What else we can do? We have certain methods here which we can use. Now, since it's a class, of course, it will have some methods, right? So there are some handy methods here. Example, you can check what is a character of a particular location. So let's say I want to know what is a character at location 2, I mean index number 1. So if I pass index 1 here, it will give me a character at index 1. So if you look at this Navin, it is n is index 0, a is index 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. And if you try to compile and run this, you can see we got a. So yeah, this is how you can basically use certain methods there, which is character at, or you can also concatenate two strings. Okay, so let's say if you concatenate my name with, I will give a space and Reddy. So basically what I'm doing is I'm concatenating Navin with Reddy here. Let's see if that works. Yeah, it worked. Can you see that we got Navin Reddy? So that's how we can basically use this. Now, since strings are so important for the programmers, what we got here is, let me just remove this line. Yeah, so string is so important for programmers. What we got in Java is, instead of writing this new string, you can actually, directly write Navin here. Even that works. So behind the scene, it will create an object. You don't have to worry about it. So when you say string name equal to Navin, it will create the object for you. You don't have to worry about object creation and those stuff. So most of the time you will see this syntax. Hardly you will say string name, new string, and then Navin. That's hardly anyone do that. So this is famous, and even this works. You can still try this out. And that's why before, when we were using string, we directly assigned the value it was working. So now I hope string makes sense. In the next video, let's try to talk about different types of strings.